Tonight's top story in a show of support, community members, including many of us here at WIFR, wear denim to honor survivors of sexual violence.
23 News reporter Sydney Stoffregan talks to a sexual trauma therapist who says Denim Day is meant to educate people on the power of the word no.
In 1999, a rape conviction was overturned because justices felt the victim's tight jeans implied consent. 25 years later, Denim Day fights to give every survivor a voice and change cultures that excuse sexual violence.
I think it'd be awesome if everybody had on denim today.
For more than 2 decades, Denim Day shows survivors of sexual violence they are not alone. Reminding the community no means no, Gretchen Eldridge with Rockford Sexual Assault Counseling believes Denim Day has evolved out of the shadows.
We have a lot of people that are coming up in this next generation and is actually making people like my generation feel more comfortable to speak out, use our voice to say these things are not okay.
Megan Brashan with Family Peace Center says when Denim Day began in 1999, the digital footprint was very small. She believes by using media platforms today, we can stop sexual violence in its tracks.
They have a collective impact, that there are lots of participants and people who are engaging because they believe that they want to do better and that survivors of sexual assault deserve better.
Every 68 seconds, someone is sexually assaulted in the United States. Eldridge says one of the biggest hurdles survivors face is shame, as 13% of female victims attempt suicide. As Denim Day continues, she hopes more survivors realize they are not to blame.
It doesn't matter what you're wearing, what you're not wearing. If you're running down the street with nothing on, you still do not deserve to be sexually assaulted.
Prashant says one of the easiest ways to show support for survivors is by spreading awareness online. By reaching a broader audience, she says we can change the conversation about sexual violence.
Thank you, Sydney. And Rockford Sexual Assault Counseling offers survivors crisis intervention, legal advocacy and clinical services, a much needed service when you consider nearly 500,000 people are sexually assaulted each year in the U.S.